Confidence among manufacturers rose to its highest level in more than 2 years in the second quarter of 2026, signaling renewed optimism in the sector. The Manufacturers Association of Nigeria's CEO Confidence Index rose 3.4 points to 52.1 from 48.7 in the first quarter. That's according to Man's survey, as released earlier today. The second quarter reading is strongest level since 53.5 points were recorded in the first quarter of 2024. An index score above 50 indicates expectations of economic expansion, while an index score below 50 suggests deterioration in the operating environment. Man attributed the increase to manufacturers' expectations around recent tax laws, executive order, and the Nigerian First Industrial Policy, rather than current business and employment conditions, which remains weak. Well, let's talk to Mr. Ogbonna Ukuku. He's an investment analyst and economic development expert. He joins me live from the United States of America for this conversation. It's good to see you. Thank you so much for your time on the show. And like I say, we appreciate you considering the timing.
Yes, fine. Thank you so much for having me.
Now, Nigeria's manufacturing confidence has reached a 2-year high, driven by optimism around recent government policies. Now, which specific policies are boosting confidence? And do you believe this optimism will translate into higher production, investment, and job creation?
Okay, so, I mean, if you look at it generally, you can see there are lots of landmark decisions that have been taken by the, present government. Investors generally always like to see continuity. They like to see resilience. They like to see, things being done, and then exactly what direction every government is going to. So if you look at the tax laws, the new tax law as it is now, so I mean, it's geared towards reducing multiple taxations in the country. You see there's stability in the FX market, which is being geared by the efforts of the Central Bank of Nigeria to make sure that we have a unified FX, and then the power market, the difference between power market and the official market, the disparity is not much anymore. It's just very insignificant. So when some of these policies and then the government coming up to say, okay, now we must patronize made in Nigeria product, and making sure that we, there's the compliance, activate, there's some activation around compliance within the procurement system in the Nigerian, in the Nigerian Federal Civil Service and all of that. So, I mean, with this, it creates a boost in the mind of those who are manufacturers. So they see that we can actually follow government policy, and then we can plan based on those consistent policies. And again, generally, whether we like it or not, there's this resilience you can see within the Nigerian economy. That there's this resilience. So it's becoming very glaring that the economy is bouncing back. So it's a good time for us to plan and then go straight into working towards our business growth.
Despite rising business confidence now, manufacturers continue to face challenges such as high borrowing costs. We know where interest rates stands, inflation and energy costs, and of course, exchange rates. Yes, that's been addressed by the Apex Bank, like you said. But what additional measures do you think are needed to ensure this renewed optimism leads to sustained growth in the sector?
Okay, like I always say, if you look at to industrialize an economy, so you need to look at your infrastructure. The infrastructure deficit has to be taken care of. Number two, you must have a sustained and well-structured strategic financial engineering structure. So which is where I'm going to dwell a bit on. So now, if the manufacturers are yes, there are a lot of the issues when it comes to commercial bank and the lending rates. Of course, the commercial banks will lend based on the MPR. So if the MPR is at a particular rate, and then that rate is actually premised on the inflation, and then what the central bank thinks they should do to make sure we curb inflation. So the thing that must be done at this point, that's why I said I want to dwell on financial engineering. There has to be some great products created around the development finance structure that will support raw material supply strategy, that will support equipment importation, equipment and equipment required for those manufacturing. Then if those products will be created, and I see the Ministry of Trade and Investment also announced that they're making efforts to bring out a $380 million financial support support for the MSMEs. So if we push for those kind of funding, it will help support those the manufacturers. And then again, we must, as a matter of urgency, begin to look at infrastructure. We have issue with the infrastructure, like I said, the deficit of infrastructure, which is not, so there has to be that plan. The national and the sub-national must sit down and say, for us to get things from, because most of the raw material we need are in the farms. They are all, around, the agro system. So until we begin to have that alliance so that we can have products move from the farm gate to the manufacturing bay. So that has to be worked upon. And then we must be very intentional about it. Other countries are doing it, okay? There are areas where we have comparative advantage. We must focus on those areas and then work towards being able to, actualize our industrial revolution.
Thank you so much for your time there. Now, our economic and investment analyst live for us there from the United States. Thanks for joining us, Mr. Ogbonna Ukuko.
Thanks for having me once again.